organization, yeah.
Hello, everyone. We'll get started in just a few minutes. We're just waiting on a few more members to join. But thank you so much for coming. Vice Mayor Dewar, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm gonna adjust the volume. Oh, yeah. Can you still hear us?
Yes.
Okay. We'll get started in just a few minutes. We're just waiting on a few more members to join for our quorum.
Well, plus, I don't even think it's quite 5:30 yet, frankly.
No, you're right. We have 2 more minutes. Is this your stuff?
Is I can move here.
Anyhow. Thank you, everyone, for coming to the Ward Neighborhood Advisory Board meeting. We're going to go ahead and get started. It is 5:30. My name is Tyler Sean, Community Liaison. If you would like to give public comment on tonight's meeting, I do have public comment forms at the front that I ask you to fill out. And if you spur of the moment want to give public comment, that's totally fine. Just fill one out after. I appreciate it. And our regular chair, Mimi Fujii Strickler, is not here today, so Cal Taylor will be running the meeting for us, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and thank you for coming. We're gonna have comments and contribute to our meeting. So can we go ahead and have a call to order and do a roll call?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair Mimi Fujii Strickler, absent at this time. Ditzel. Here. Fisher. Here. Taylor.
Here.
Hinman, absent at this time. Schomburg. Here. Keats. Here. Dowdy.
Here.
Thank you. Shin.
Here.
Keller.
Present.
Mr. Chair, you do have a form of the Ward 2 Neighborhood Advisory Board.
Okay, fine. So I think I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, because obviously we have a new technological thing going on here, and perhaps you can kind of bring us all up to speed on how this works or
Yeah.
the purpose.
We changed our conference equipment, so we're using an owl now. The camera should automatically select who's speaking. So for those of you on Zoom in the room, you can see I'm up there in the corner. If you just start your comments by stating your name for the record, the owl will switch over to you. And then the people on Zoom should be able to see your face. Hopefully it'll make it a little bit more participatory and easier for people to see and understand. The other changes, I do have a presenter chair up here next to Member Taylor. So if you're a presenter at tonight's meeting, I ask that you sit there so we can make sure your comments are clear for the record. As well as public commenters, you don't have to sit there if you don't want, but if you could just move towards the front of the room, that way we can make sure your comments are captured. I would appreciate it.
Good. It'll be interesting because I think it may be a little more one-on-one kind of a feeling with this technology. So I think it's going to be interesting seeing how it works. Okay, at this, we have public comments at 2 points in the meeting, at the beginning of the meeting and at the end of the meeting. And obviously, we're fairly open in terms of comments when we get to particular agenda items, but sometimes people have a particular comment that they make at the beginning of the meeting. 3 minutes for comments. If anybody has any comments they'd like to make now, before we go into the rest of the agenda, this would be the appropriate time.
Mr. Chair, before we do public comment, I do have to make a disclosure. Members of the public wishing to attend the meeting may hear, observe, and provide public comment virtually by pre-registering using the following link, which will provide the webinar ID and call-in phone number. The link is https://LINK/Reno/gov/3 capital H 5 capital U B 6 capital Q. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. Unused time may not be reserved by the speaker nor allocated to another speaker. No action may be taken on a matter raised under general public comment until the matter is included on a subsequent agenda as an action item. And with that, Mr. Chair, we do have 2 people who registered to give public comment. We'll start with
And
Carter.
before we start, I just wanted to, usually at the roll call, you also mentioned that I'm here, Councilmember Dewar, and that we have our liaison here, Tyler Shaw. And I don't know if there's any other members of staff here as well.
I believe we also have Jeff Foster in the room
Okay.
with our own staff.
Okay. So just for the benefit of the public commenters and all the participants, I wanted them to know I'm here as well. I just a little under the weather, and so I'm doing Zoom today.
Good. We're glad you're here in whatever form you're here.
Okay.
All right. Do we have anybody who would like to make a public comment at this time?
First, we have Carter Conway. Carter, you'll have 3 minutes. Please start by stating your name for the record.
And I can just stand, is that right?
Yep.
Sure.
My head's gonna cut off, so I'm gonna sit down. All right. Thank you. My name is Carter Conway. I'm here because I'm running for Reno Justice of the Peace Department 1. My code word, I guess, is the right experience, the right choice. I am currently a judge, part-time judge. I serve as both a pro tem judge in a couple of courts, but I was also appointed by the current justices in the Reno Justice Court to serve as what's known as a court master. It's basically an assistant, so I fill in when needed. I'm on the bench about 3 to 4 times a week now. I was on the bench yesterday. I'm going to be on the bench tomorrow, and then Thursday and Friday. So that's 4 days this week that I'll be on the bench. I also have 32 years of experience as a trial lawyer. So I have the experience in the courtroom as a lawyer, as well as experience on the bench. I think it's important that we put in qualified, experienced judges, because what's coming up in the next 4 years is about 4 of the judges that are there now are retiring. So we need leadership, and I don't think we can put people in there that don't have the experience, don't have the know-how to do the job. And I would appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, can you repeat your name, please?
Absolutely. Carter C. Conway. And I'll be sitting in the back. I definitely want to listen to the Humane Society speech, but I'm going to be here for a while.
Which position are you running for?
Justice of the Peace Department 1. There's 6 departments, basically.
So Reno Justice of the Peace.
Reno Justice of the Peace, that is correct.
Okay.
And like I said, I'll be here. I'm gonna try to be here for the whole meeting, so
All right.
be in the back if anyone has any questions, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else like to make a public comment at this time?
Mr. Chair, we have Beth Dory registered to do public comment.
And you want me to sit up here?
Yeah, if you could
Yeah.
sit up there, or if you could scoot a little closer, just to make sure we pick up your comments.
Those of us who are hearing challenged like to have you close.
Right, yeah. I'm Beth Dory. I live in Ward 1, soon to be Ward 2. And I'm here to talk about the proposal for ADUs that's coming up. I have 3 homes that have old CCNRs. One is from the 20s, one's from the 30s, and one's from the 60s. All of them are active and all of them do not allow multifamily. So it does not allow fourplexes or ADUs in the backyard. I think this was rather short-sighted of the planning commission to say that we're gonna allow fourplexes. They wanted to do 0 lot lines and on demand or something without even notifying the neighbors.
And just so we're clear.
Sure.
Would you explain what ATUs are?
Oh, accessory dwelling units.
So the.
Granny
the
flats.
Grandpa's,
Yeah,
flat in the backyard.
but a lot of times they don't throw granny in the back.
Right,
It's used for Airbnbs
Sure.
and, yeah,
okay,
so,
good,
but
thank
my,
you.
my concern is, this is a map of Newlands. And this was presented at council, maybe a couple months ago, actually in May. And they said, hey, folks,
You can hold up so people can see it here. We're back.
this,
Yeah,
oh, wow, okay.
good, all right.
There we go. You've already been upzoned. And I have my CCNRs that say that that's not allowed. So I'm hoping, I see Mr. Foster, I'm hoping that the planning department reevaluates the ADU proposal. I'm not 100% against ADUs, but I'm 100% against neighborhood wars. So if somebody knows about these CCNRs and the planning commission approves an ADU, it'll create neighborhood wars and that won't be a good thing.
So your concern is that the planning commission may have approved these, but the particular CCNRs that apply to that project, in fact, are do not apply to them. So you've got a conflict in terms of potential
Exactly.
language.
Very well put. Yeah, as I said, the Newlands neighborhood has already been upzoned, but it is completely against my CCNRs that were made in 1929 and they are still active. There's not an active HOA, but these are active CCNRs. Angela Foose said too, the CCNRs trump anything that the city of Reno does. So as I said, my concern is that the city has done this without realizing that there could be neighborhood wars down the road, so.
One of the things I'm gonna suggest is we've got somebody here from planning, maybe, after the meeting's over or something, you two might have a chance to at least have a short conversation to, see how this might be addressed. Okay?
Okay,
Yeah.
All right.
yes,
Yes.
I
I never stop you.
Donna knows everything about this, trust me.
I think I'm understanding you to be saying that you have a question about where the burden of proof lies. Somebody wants to build this because it's not in Title 18, that it's an individual CCNR. Is that correct?
I'm
So,
actually
we can
concerned,
That it's not legal. If they get the permit, the city's not gonna know it. So that's the concern. So maybe Naomi, you can keep that in mind and when it comes up to council, think about, where is the burden of proof on that? And they're proposing to not have noticing on these. So a neighbor wouldn't even know to look up their CCNRs until after the garden had already been permanent and partially built.
Well, exactly. And we've run into the same problem in my neighborhood where we also have CCNRs, but not an HOA. And the real question is who is tracking compliance with the CCNRs. We happen to have a committee, architectural committee, but not every community does. And the city has basically said, not our job. So I don't want to get too far afield in that this is not on our agenda, but I have had the benefit of talking with Beth at some length. Unfortunately, it was when I was even sicker than I am today. But I'm very cognizant of it does appear to be an issue or a flaw, potentially a fatal flaw. So we need to somehow address it.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else in the room who'd like to give opening public comment? There will be an opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting as well as on each agenda item. If there's anyone on Zoom who'd like to give public comment today, please use the raise hand button at the bottom of the Zoom window. And Mr. Chair, it does look like we have one member of the public who would like to give comment. Ian, you should be able to unmute. Please start by stating your name for the record and you'll have 3 minutes.
I'm
I'm sorry, your audio is cutting in and out. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm muted.
It sounds like your internet connection might be unstable. We're only getting the first couple words of your sentences.
Hold on. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I think we can hear you now. Please state your name for the record and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Ian Luckahant, and I was just raising my hand because this is my first time here and just doing roll call sort of thing.
Okay. Thank you very much. There's going to be an opportunity for public comment on other items if you want to give comment. For now, is that all you wanted to say?
Yes, and I do want to know, what is your plan to tackle the homeless issue encroaching, exploding across Reno?
So public comment on these meetings, unfortunately, is not a question and answer. We have to only discuss what we're agendized to discuss, but I'd be happy to connect with you offline and talk with you one-on-one on the phone and help get you some answers. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, I'm actually probably just up the street from you guys. You're on the Moana Lane Mercery across from the Nevada State Bank, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I'll be right over.
Okay.
I'd be happy to talk with you after the meeting.
Okay, so she's got 2 minutes. All right, anybody else, public comment?
I don't see anyone else who would like to give opening public comment this time, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so item B1, informational presentation from the Nevada Humane Society. This is for discussion only.
Well,
We have to approve.
Oh,
Yes, before we get into item B1, we have a couple items.
Oh.
Mr. Chair, the first one.
I'm sorry, agenda and then it's my fault.
That's okay.
Sorry, I just leaped ahead. With regards to the agenda, is there approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting?
Tony Keats, for the record, I move to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Okay,
Is there a second?
second,
A second.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, agenda approved,
You didn't,
Before we move on, Mr. Chair,
yes,
you didn't ask if there were any corrections
are there any
you're right,
corrections or questions
Or
about the
omissions.
agenda?
yes.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Audrey
Okay.
Keller. I was reading under the item C1 regarding the Rancheria Village tentative map.
Oh, I'm sorry, this is approval of the agenda, not approval of the minutes.
Yeah.
So this is
We'll
only
get to
if you
the
have questions about today's agenda, the next one will be minutes.
Okay,
All right,
my apologies.
okay, we're ready for A4.
We still have to take the vote. All those in favor?
Oh, that's right, on approval of the, no, we did.
No.
No, that's right, you
I
interrupted us.
Yes,
You did, but then she called.
All right, could we have a vote on approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting?
Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
None, motion passes.
Okay. Any abstaining? All right, with regards to A4, approval of the minutes for the April 16th, 2024 meeting, which are attached. Are there any corrections or proposed changes to the minutes?
Yes, but it's also maybe a protocol question. So there's a lot of detail on the ranchera public comment. I don't know which staff member does that. There's a lot of bullet points you'll note. I made notes as they were talking, and there is a very important piece about answering a question about open space that is not on the minutes. Open space in the development. That was omitted. And my second comment is on item C2, the Canyons PUD amendment. There was quite a lengthy discussion on that one as well. And the item that I noted that is omitted, it says impacts on wildlife. It was actually a big deal about access to water for the horses, the wild horses that reside there. There's a bridge that was an issue and being discussed. And I believe it should be accurately recorded. Those
Yeah,
are my
but
comments.
I think that was part of the general discussion of wildlife, though. What I'm trying to do is not have every little item within a category necessarily. Wouldn't be, it's when we discuss a whole item, when we don't have it here, obviously that we want to do. You're right, we had some discussion with regards to
Yeah,
access to water. That was part of the discussion with regards to wildlife. So I think it would come within the general purview of the minutes, but yeah.
In the context of what happens subsequently, that's going up, ones that being tabled in there, the both, I mean, really other things. I think it is worthy of its own individual record.
Roman Schomburg for the record, the second with Donna saying about the wild horses.
I'm sorry, my hearing is just so terrible. Maybe I shouldn't chair meetings, but you can keep your voice up. I'd appreciate it.
The second, what Donna mentioned about the wild horses, in the area of the Canyons development, wild horses are an issue of their own in general. So I think it would be, important to make it a point of its own.
Okay. So, so we should add something that there was a discussion with regards to
The direct.
the impact
yes,
of the wild horses in this area.
yes.
Okay, so we could add something, just a general comment, just to make sure it's picked up here, so that people know that we discussed it and considered it. Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Okay, yes, go ahead.
The board has two options. You can either take a motion now to approve the minutes as as amended verbally, and then I can come back with an approved version, or if you'd like to wait on the approval, I can bring back an amended version at a future meeting. The choice is yours.
I move to not approve until we have an amended version.
So all in favor of not approving the minutes for today's agenda?
So we're tabling until you come with minutes with some additional, yeah. Sure. Okay, so that's the motion. We got a second, I assume.
Need a vote?
Yeah, okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna table the discussion of the minutes now. Tyler's gonna work on the minutes, put a couple of items in there that, and then we'll take a look at those as amended minutes at presumably the next meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, approved. Okay, council liaison report.
Yeah.
In fact, got this new technology.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good to have everyone that's here today here. I just wanted to report, I think, on one thing that happened at our last council meeting, and that is relevant to what you were just talking about, which is that the council did decide to approve an additional $300,000 for the horse fencing. And just by way of schedule, the horse fencing contract is scheduled to come back, I believe, at the July 31st council meeting for approval. This had gone out to bid. It was a first phase. The 300,000 I'm mentioning is a second phase that goes south of Geiger Grade. And it includes a horse guard at Geiger Grade, fencing along Geiger Grade, and then south to Town Road Toll Road, and then, some connections with other fences over to Virginia Street. So I just wanted to let people know that was moving forward. And then in terms of, water for the horses, we were, I don't know if I reported on this, so I think most people know that we were successful working with the developer, which is Sunny Hills, to leave open gates to an area that was providing water for horses for 30 days while the city did an emergency contract to take down some fence that was preventing horses from water in another area. And so all of that happened. To my knowledge, the gate is still open. The wild horse community is working on moving the horses north to the new watering hole. And you know, there's an old saying about you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Well, it's hard to get the horses to the new water, frankly, as long as the old water's open. But the concern is if the old water stays open, or if it's suddenly shut off, that would create a crisis. So I think there's a transition period being worked through right now, is my understanding. I'm not in immediate contact with the folks working on that. But that is underway, and I think there's a lot of concern given our high temperatures and, you know, how hot it's been and how long it's been hot. So I just wanted to, it was a real success, and I'm very grateful to the other council members for supporting this. We paid for it out of our contingency funds, and those are there for emergencies, and no contingency funds had been spent the entire last fiscal year. So we had no emergencies, no big fires, no big floods. And so the funds were available, and the council decided to fund several other projects. I don't have the full list with me right at the moment, but they funded a number of projects. Tyler may recall all of the different projects, but anyway, I mean, I know one of them was people really have taken to the hazardous waste and electrical waste recycling that we started in Ward 2 with your support. I did that about 5 years ago, and that's really taken the other wards by storm. And so there was some additional money put in, I believe it was $50,000 to help expand that, continue expanding that to the other wards, well, to all the wards, frankly, because up till now I've been paying for it out of my council funds. And then during the ARPA funds becoming available, or paid for through that ARPA funds, but the ARPA funds are now done for that project. And so now we're back to looking at general fund. And so this is the first attempt to have some general fund dollars go to this program. So I'm absolutely thrilled with the tremendous community support and also the council member support for this project going forward. So that's about what I have to report on today right now. And the reason being right now that city council's on a break. And so we're not having meetings. Our next meeting will be July 24th. And because we haven't had a meeting for a while, it'll be a pretty big agenda. And so, yeah.
And by the
That's
way, I certainly want to thank staff involvement with regards to the waste disposal projects. They've been very involved with that. So,
Exactly. So we've had a group called HAND, Housing and Neighborhood Services, which had taken over the project and really gave some form to it and set things up in an advanced manner so that all of the wards would have the benefit of that. So it's been really good. And I think they've experienced it, all the wards, that people come from all the wards. I mean, when we're holding them, my last one was in May, and people came, you know, from Sparks, from Washoe Valley, from North Valleys. I mean, they come from everywhere because there's really a demand to get rid of this material in a sustainable way. So,
okay,
okay.
that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if there's any questions from anyone about those things that I mentioned or other.
Yes, I have a question.
Who was that?
Roman?
Roman. Hey, Roman.
Hi, what was the city council meeting that that the $300,000 was approved? Do you have the
That was
date?
on June 12th.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions or comments?
So I just want to recap. We had already allocated $500,000. So this brings the total up to $800,000. With 500,000 from ARPA and then this 300,000. The project was expected to cost 1.1 million. So we still may have a shortfall, but the bids are coming in and we're trying to see if they're coming in, even a more favorable than we had hoped.
Okay, good. All right. Any other questions or comments for Councilman Dewar? All right. Staff liaison report.
Good evening, everyone. Tyler Shaw, Community Liaison for the record. I have a very short update for you all. Our next Ward 2 Neighborhood Advisory Board meeting will be on August 20th at 5:30 p.m. here in the Moana Nursery Seminar Room and by Zoom.
All right, so clear your schedules.
Right.
All right,
August
All right.
20th.
thank you, Tyler. Any questions for Tyler? All right. Now are we at B1? Okay. Informational presentation from the Nevada Humane Society. And again, this is for discussion and information only. Thank you.
And I want to welcome Jerlene while she's coming up. I've had a chance to work with her for over a year now. Many of you may not know that I'm chair of the Washoe County Animal Advisory Board, and the Humane Society is an important partner. We have a contract with them. We share space with them. And some of you may notice that my dog was very interested in the presentation and joined me a few moments ago. She's sitting right next to me, eager to hear what you have to say, Jerlene.
Thank you, and good evening, Vice Mayor Dewar, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here. My name is Jerlene Bryant. I'm the CEO of the Nevada Humane Society. I was invited to come and just share a little bit of information about Nevada Humane Society. So I am not going to get too in the weeds, because it's a rather large organization and we do a lot in the community, so I could really take up a lot of everyone's time. But I do want to just share, maybe at a somewhat of a higher level, some information about what we do, the services and programs that we provide, and what our role is here in the community. I joined Nevada Humane a little over a year ago, in May of 2023. I came on at a time, in fact, I really didn't plan on being here permanently. It was a very challenging time for Nevada Humane Society. It's not a new organization. It's over 90 years old. And I'm sure, like any senior organization, there has been peaks and valleys in its lifetime. And I came in at a time that was a little bit of a valley. And so this organization had gotten off track. It was not in line with best practices in animal welfare. Animal welfare has progressed significantly in the last 20 plus years, which is about the same, well, about the amount of time that I've been in this industry, and need a little bit of help. It's a great organization with very good people, and just haven't been supported with appropriate leadership for a number of years. So we're a little over 90 years old. We have two campuses, one here in Reno on Longley and one in Carson City. We are the largest adoption agency, well, animal welfare agency that does adoptions in Northern Nevada, and the second largest in the state of Nevada. Our campus in Carson City is significantly smaller than here in Reno, however, and we do all of the same functions that we do here in Reno, except we have the animal control contract in Carson City. So we take in about 10,000 animals a year. We help close to about 18,000 animals a year through food assistance in our community, low-cost vaccine clinics, microchipping, services that we provide to the community above and beyond the animals that we bring in and that we shelter. So I threw up just a few stats from 2023. That way we can have a full picture of that year. And pretty much reiterates what I just said. So we do have all of our animals that come into us. We have a full medical clinic. Between the two campuses, we have about 120 staff when we're fully staffed. Our medical clinic, we have 4 full-time veterinarians and then numerous other support staff. So it's about 25 people that are in our medical clinic. We provide medical interventions and surgeries above and beyond spay and neuter surgeries for all of our animals that are adopted from us. We do nucleations and amputations and truly perform medicine on these animals that have no one to care for them as if we were a private practice clinic. And we do that solely through the support of the generosity of supporters in our community. So I will apologize that some of the stats, well, this is from last year, but some of the stats you'll be seeing are for Q1. And sadly, the timing of this meeting just, I won't have Q2. They're being compiled right now and they're probably not going to be done till Friday, but it's okay. It's a little glimpse of the numbers of what we're doing. So Good Samaritan and owner surrenders in 2023, over 3,000 of those animals. And Good Samaritans are typically kittens that are found in the community that are under 2 pounds. And those come, even though they could be considered a stray animal and taken to Washoe County Regional Animal Services, that is not in the best interest of that kitten. And so both of our organizations agree that those really fragile, vulnerable babies should come directly to our organization where they receive immediate medical care and put out into foster. And sometimes those babies come into us just hours old. Sometimes they fail to thrive, which is a term in animal welfare. That means we've done everything we can and we just can't save it. And oftentimes we can, but it is quite a significant number. And we are in the height of kitten season right now. And that is a very challenging time for our organization. Kittens are, if you came in and were just a fly on the wall in our lobby, you would see people coming in with crates and boxes and laundry hampers filled with kittens. And it's a big lift for us. It's a very resource heavy program. But if we don't do it, who's going to do it? And so, so we take it very seriously and we do the best that we can. And so, again, over 3,000 of those, and primarily those are those kittens.
And I assume the owner surrenders are owners who say, I just can't take care of this animal or
Exactly.
something.
There's a variety of reasons why people surrender their animals. We are the officially contracted agency in our Northern Nevada in Washoe County to accept publicly surrendered animals. What I would like to mention is that we do this and we don't receive funding for these animals. So again, we're able to do it through the generosity of donors in our community. So, but over 4,800 animals were transferred in from our partners on the other side of our building, which is Washoe County Regional Animal Services. They are the animal control government agency, animal control agency. And then we were able to do, this is just a small example of one of the programs that we provide to our community. And we did over 5,000 low-cost vaccines to owned pets in our community. So this last year has been pretty intense for us because we had a lot of work to do to get this organization back to a healthy place. And again, adhering to all of those high standards of best practices in animal welfare. So a few of the things, and I guess I will back up and say that there isn't one department or one area of Nevada Humane Society that hasn't been evaluated, that wasn't under a spotlight, that we didn't need to make some sort of changes and improvement in. And I recently, probably about 6 weeks ago, had all of my directors of departments compile a list of the changes that have occurred over these last 12 months or so in their departments. And I'll be really honest, it was like an emotional moment for me because it was pages long. And those pages represented a tireless work, and a lot of my staff missed family events and vacations because we had work to do and they were really dedicated, and I'm grateful to them. So pet pantry hours. That used to be only 1 or 2 days a week that our community could come in and receive food to feed their pets. And Pet Pantry is a program that we have where we provide food to families who are experiencing difficulties and challenges and cannot feed their animals. So not only do we not want animals to go without food, we don't want them surrendered to us either. So it's part of our shelter diversion program to make sure that these animals are receiving food and that they stay with the families that love them and who they love and are familiar with. So last year, we distributed over 65,000 pounds of food into our community. And much of that food came from our community. It was donated to us. We repackaged it and managed that program and then distribute it back out into our community. And so if we are open, which is 7 days a week from 11 in the morning until 6:30 at night, and you need help to feed your animals, you can show up anytime. You don't need to make an appointment, you don't need to call ahead of time, you can show up and our staff will show compassion and understanding and provide you food to feed your animals. So again, low-cost vaccine clinics, we do that twice here in Reno, twice a week, and then once a week in Carson City.
And I'm sorry for those who
no.
don't know, what kinds of vaccines are being provided?
All the typical vaccines for dogs and cats, including rabies. So
All right.
distemper, parvo. I think it's affordable, $15, maybe $20 for the rabies vaccine and no exam fee. So we don't want there to be a barrier to vaccinating your animals and keeping them healthy. We treat a lot of parvo cases at our shelter. We have
What is your address?
we're on Longley Lane.
Okay.
We have 3 quarantine areas for dogs that we bring in pretty much all parvo cases from Washoe County Regional Animal Services and it's primarily puppies or junior aged dogs that would get parvo. And we bring them in and we treat them, and it is round the clock care. So
And again, for those who don't know, what do you mean by parvo?
parvovirus is a preventable yet deadly disease in dogs. And if they are vaccinated with the parvovirus vaccine, it's very effective. They will, I don't want to say 100% chance they wouldn't get parvo, but it is a very effective vaccine. If they are not vaccinated, parvo lives in our environment on grass and on any substance in your home, on carpet. If you had a parvo animal, it can live there for several years. And dogs are highly susceptible to get it. So getting that parvo vaccine is incredibly important. If you have a puppy and that puppy is not vaccinated and it couldn't be fully vaccinated until it's 16 weeks old, you don't want to take it out into public areas. I see it all the time. I see people out walking their puppies at parks and in pet stores, and it just makes my insides cringe. So yes, and then in animal welfare, we have another term. We have a lot of terms in animal welfare. It's barriers to adoption. We want to be a stopping point for animals. We want them to be with us the shortest amount of time possible. It's less resources for us, and we're not the home for these animals. As much as we try to make it as comfortable in a low stress environment, and there's a lot of things we do to try to decrease stress in our animals, we're not their home. So we want to get them out into a home as fast as possible. And when I came to Nevada Humane Society a year ago, we had numerous barriers to adoption. Some of those were our adoption areas were areas that used to be public for dogs that are up for adoption were closed and had been closed since COVID. And there was no reason for that. And on day one that I got to Nevada Humane, you know, these things are jumping out at me. And Vice Mayor Dewar was a supporter certainly of opening those dog adoption areas back up to the public. And we did that I think on August 4th, we were able to do that because there was some internal changes that we needed to make. They had been closed for several years. Nevada Humane had previously been closed in the middle of the day for nap time for an hour. And if people were in our shelter looking at animals and wanted to adopt, they had to leave and come back. And so we did away with that very quickly, I think the week after I got there. And then there are a variety of other changes that we had done to just embrace our community, welcome them in. We are their animal shelter, welcome them in. We want everyone to feel welcome to come in, ask questions, visit with the animals, and we want to be as welcoming and open as we can be. And so we removed a lot of barriers that had originally been in place or had been in place for several years. I wanted to just share a couple fun little updates on our animals. Like I said, we see 10,000 animals come through our doors, needing housing care, medical care, enrichment. You know, a shelter is not the best place for an animal. We do the best we can to provide that enrichment to our dogs and cats to keep them mentally healthy. It's not just about physically healthy. We want to keep them as happy and healthy as we can until they find their permanent home. We take in a lot of senior animals, a lot. In fact, just because an animal is senior, I mean, it could be 15 years old. That is not a reason we won't take it in. We won't transfer it in from animal services. We transfer many seniors in. We transfer in many animals with really serious injuries and medical conditions. And Zumi was one of them. This cute little guy came in, he was over at Washoe County Regional Animal Services. They suspected he had been hit by a car. We transferred him in, there was no saving the leg. So the leg was amputated. He stayed in our care for 2 months, being cared for and walked and cuddled with by staff and volunteers. And we are so happy to share that I think it was just several weeks ago, he was adopted. Oh, and he went on the news and one of our Pet of the Week spots. And he was adopted and he was running around Zumi. He's named appropriately, Zumi, even on 3 legs, running around and is going to live his best and happiest life with a home that loves him. So we are really thrilled for him. And again, just to kind of recap on our foster program and those really vulnerable little babies. I think I already mentioned this earlier, over 2,700 of them went out into foster this last year. That is a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, a lot of coordinating. We provide all of the supplies to our foster homes. We just ask them, provide the roof, provide the TLC and the love and the care to these babies, and then we will provide all of the supplies and the equipment that you may need. Lot of volunteer hours, and it took a lot of donors and it takes a lot of donors to be able to provide all of this care to all of these animals.
What is the average foster time?
You know, it depends, because
Sorry, for the people who are listening, what was the question?
What was the average foster time?
Yeah, so when it comes to kittens, when kittens are 2 pounds, and if they're healthy and 2 pounds, we can spay and neuter them and they can go up for adoption. And until that happens, we would like them to be in a foster home, being socialized and played with and cared for and gaining that weight and that age. So if a kitten comes in days old, then if a foster can keep, and typically that 2 pounds happens at around 8 weeks old. So if a foster home can keep that kitten until they're 2 pounds, wonderful. Sometimes we have fosters that say, I can only keep for a week, I'm going on vacation, or I can only foster for 3 weeks, or maybe it's an amputation and we just need a dog like Zumi to go into foster for probably 3 days. And then just give him a soft bed and for 3 days, and then he can come back and go on the adoption floor and be adopted. So we let our fosters tell us what works for them. So, and then Bella, we have so many success stories like this, but this one was kind of near and dear to my heart because I was with our director of operations and I was in the non-public area of our shelter and I was looking at a different dog. And next to the kennel that I was looking at was this cute little white shaggy Shih Tzu-y Maltese little thing. And she's at the very front and she's wagging her tail and she had a cone on. And I said, oh my gosh, what's happening with her? And my director of operations, who is the one who selects the dogs that are being transferred from Washoe County Regional Animal Services. Well, day before yesterday, I was over and I'm looking at the dogs that they're off their stray hold. And she had blood on her and we didn't know why. She had been on a stray hold. So they're waiting to see if an owner shows up. And he transferred her over to our side. Our medical clinic immediately got her. Imagine, we have over 600 animals in our care right now. And it is a lot to keep track of. And they immediately got her and got her in for an exam and found that she had a bladder stone. The picture does not do it justice. I have another picture after they took it out, but I don't want to share it because you never know. And it is shocking how big it was. And it was in her. And this little girl, she sat on a straight hold for 5 days and waiting for an owner that didn't show up in incredible pain. And yet she was wagging her tail the whole time. And so she immediately got surgery that same day that they discovered that they took this x-ray. And she was available for adoption for 9 hours and she was adopted. Just, I think that right person at the right time saw her and it just makes me really happy because she went through a period of time that wasn't happy for her. And so I was, so these are just a few graphs. Again, this is Q1, not Q2, just a couple days short of having those. But as you can see, in Q1 of this year, so 55% of the animals we took in Q1 were transferred over from our partners on the other side of our building at Washoe County Regional Animal Services. And we are partners, we collaborate together. It is important to note that we are separate organizations with separate funding, separate leadership, separate missions, but we collaborate and we work closely together. And then 32% of our intake in Q1 was publicly surrendered animals for a variety of reasons. And we track those reasons, we capture that information. I'm always asked what are the top reasons why people surrender their pets. I can tell you housing challenges is number one. It's getting harder and harder to find housing, especially if you rent, to find housing where you can have dogs or pets, and especially if those dogs are over 20 pounds or 25 pounds. So it is challenging. Financial challenges are another one. Life events happen too, and families, break up and things like, there's a lot of reasons. And so, but we're here to help those animals, the ones that we can help, that have quality of life, and don't have, medical conditions that would keep them from having quality of life, or animals that are safe. We're only going to put animals back out in our community that we determine are safe for our community. So,
Wait, what was the return? You had
8%. So our
and I bring it back.
our return rate is about 8%. That's a pretty good number. That was Q1. We ended the year last year at about a 6% return rate. Summer, our intake is higher, so our return rate is probably going to be higher in Q1. Well, not really, so spring. And probably a little higher in Q2. We'll see when I get those stats. But sometimes it doesn't work out. And our staff and our volunteers who are so attached to our animals can take it really personally when an animal is returned. And I do my best to coach them that, we really shouldn't take it personal. The animal doesn't take it personal. They got a break from the shelter. And oftentimes when they come back to us, we know more about them. And then that helps us make a better match and counsel the next interested adopter and to help them try to make a good match.
So has your return rate fallen since you came on board?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know that I've grabbed that information from the previous year, from 2022. Yeah.
I adopted a dog during bad times.
Okay,
It was very unpleasant for me,
okay,
and she was a nightmare, and everybody I know kept telling me, you gotta get rid of that dog.
okay,
And she showed me back here, because I wasn't her first home,
okay,
and I didn't return her.
okay.
But she is on anti-anxiety meds, and
Yeah.
it's costing a lot of money, et cetera. My vet tells me that a lot of people just euthanize it.
Hmm.
A lot of the adoptions during the early COVID years didn't go well later.
Maybe, I think there's a lot of information out there, and I think, I'm so sorry that you had that experience, because that's not a pleasant experience, and we don't want that. And sometimes we don't have that information. These many times, like you can see right here, 55% of those animals in Q1 came from Washoe County Regional Animal Services, and they picked them up as strays. So we have no history. All we have is what we glean from that animal while it is in our care. And if it is not an unsafe animal, then it'll be put up for adoption. If we believe, and sometimes we don't know, but
Well,
some,
that's just one you missed, but she was biting me, but I had to tie her up in order to eat. And I got
Okay.
bitten all the time,
Yeah.
shredding my shirts.
that's not good.
Pretty
Yeah,
bad.
that's not good.
What happened to her?
Yeah, and so, well, I'm happy about that. I can tell you that the protocols for behavior assessments and behavior interventions were different in the past than they are now. That doesn't mean, I'm not necessarily talking about euthanasia decisions. I'm talking about really trying to assess what the issues are with this animal. What can we do? Is there anything we can do? And sharing that information transparently with anybody who would be interested in that animal. I can tell you that today, that is how we operate.
I don't think
So-
it was a problem with. It was a management problem, and my unpleasant experience had to do with the management. Staff was
Yeah.
great, and talked blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, Yeah.
It was a management issue,
Yeah.
and they bullied me, and I wasn't prepared for a problem child.
I'm very sorry to hear that.
Thank you, I mean, I'm just still happy.
And if I could share a story, because I've now been in 2 hearings having to do with dogs who in fact had attacked people.
Mhm.
And I will tell you simply, if I could have strangled the owner of that dog, I would have done it. He was one of those people he wanted to put a big chain on the dog and walk through the casinos and everything.
Yeah.
So the whole attitude of the dog was really being driven by that owner.
Yeah.
And then, of course, at some point, a tragic kind of thing
Yeah.
happened. It could have been much worse. So a lot of times, it's like, yes, you want to know about the dog, but you want to know about the owner too. What kinds of habits, what kinds of interactions with strangers has that dog been exposed to
Sure.
with that owner?
And when somebody contacts us to surrender an animal, it is a process. We gather as much information as we can. And that animal, we do pathway, and this is new for Nevada Humane. This is something that hadn't been happening before. We do pathway planning on every dog, which means what is the history of this dog? What do we know about this dog? What behaviors is this dog exhibiting? Not just what we were able to collect from previous owners, but we have a shelter software program, and that, of course, all this information goes into. And our staff, every staff person that interacts with these animals has to then collect that information and put it in as notes. And our saving rate, our life-saving rate, which is our LRR that you saw, so for this last year was 94%. And what I will tell you is that for dogs, it is higher. For cats, that number is, cats drive down that number a little bit, and it's because of all those neonatal babies that died on their own because the way that you calculate a live release rate is simply you take all noses in, every animal that comes into your organization, divided by every animal that leaves alive. So whether it was euthanized or whether it died on its own, it counts against our live release rate. So, I can tell you that, our behavior euthanasia for dogs is, hovers right at about 2%. When I got to Nevada Humane Society, the policy at Nevada Humane was at that time, prior to me coming on board and some of my current leadership, we were adopting out, that organization was adopting out dogs with bite history. And we don't do that. Now, it may not have been the dog's fault. They may have had a terrible life and they're fearful and that's why they bite. But the end result is if regardless of how that happened, if they're an undue risk in our community, probably can't go out into our community, but it's never a straightforward answer. And that's why we do pathway planning for every animal, for every dog. Cats need less pathway planning, but we know they're grouchy a lot of the times, but, that I hope gives a little bit of information about Nevada Humane Society. If anyone would like to come down and take a tour and kind of behind the scenes and ask any other questions that you may have, I am very happy to do that. And I'll leave some of my cards here tonight. But is there any other questions that I can answer for? Yeah.
Yes, Audrey Keller. Jerlene, what's your annual budget?
For Nevada Humane, which is
Yeah.
again, both organizations, our annual budget is just under 10 million.
And what's the revenue source? All donations?
So our revenue source, I can tell you that everything we do here in Reno, which is 80% of what we do, is donor funded in the form of bequests and annual giving and monthly, donors. It is coming from our community. In Carson City, we have a contract for animal control and the services we provide in Carson City, and that is about 15% of our budget is about 800,000 is our contract in Carson City.
I'm curious, do you have a number, like an average number per animal that you have in your facility, like what that cost is over the time that they're there?
Yeah, so that's the magic question in animal welfare. Every shelter is trying to figure out exactly what the cost is of every animal, because sometimes they come through and it's a puppy and we do a spay and neuter and we didn't have to invest much and it gets adopted in 3 days. And so we don't have, but we just adopted on Saturday a dog that had been in our care for 320 days. And so you could take our budget and divide it by the number of animals. I mean, it's a little rudimentary. And you could say that the average cost of each of our animals is $600. All animals that are over 8 years old have no adoption fee. And so puppies and kittens are gonna have a higher adoption fee. Animals that are over 2 years old, I think a dog is $75. So it's a loss leader. We're not making much on adoptions. And then of course, over 8 years old, that adoption fee is waived. Now, this is again, a challenging time for us. Our capacity has been in a really critical place. Well, for cats, we have been at 100% capacity for probably about 5 weeks now. And while cats are going out, they're coming in. So if we do 10 adoptions for cats, that means we have 10 openings and we can transfer from Washoe County. And then, well, maybe we know we have 3 owner surrenders coming in, so we can transfer 7 in from Washoe County that day. So we fill to our max capacity cats. For dogs, it's a little more challenging. We need some empty kennels. We could have somebody being evicted that has 4 or 5 dogs and we have to take them. Or we could have a parvo a dog exposed to parvo or test positive, and we have to shut down an entire row and quarantine that entire row. So we try not to go above 80% capacity. That is our max. And we have been at 90% capacity for dogs over a week now. And just when we get it down to, 80%, all of a sudden it bumps right back up. And so as a measure to try to combat that a little bit, this last Saturday, we had an adoption promotion and an event where all adult animals at both campuses that had been in our care over 14 days had waived adoption fees. And I'm really happy to say that 82 animals slept in a home that night on Saturday night. So they weren't all over 14 days in our care, but many of our longtime dogs, our community responded, they came out and they did adopt some of our long-term dogs. So very happy about that. Yes.
Offer you stay in neuter for free.
Can you step when you can come up here?
Offer any stay and neuter services for free.
For owned pets?
No.
No, I will tell you that, building our community spay neuter program back up is pretty much my #1 priority. It was about getting our organization back on track. Because if you don't have a stable foundation, you cannot add programs. You break people and it doesn't work. So, we desperately need to build that program back up. We just opened some slots for owned cats at, I think it's $45 a cat. If you go to your private veterinarian, even cats right now are in the hundreds to have spayed or neutered. When we do open it back up for dogs, it'll probably be around $150 for a spay. And right now your private veterinarians are $600 to $800 for a medium size to large size adult spay. So we don't want there to be a barrier. We don't want the cost to be a barrier to spaying and neutering animals. There is a national veterinarian shortage around the country, and we are all vying for the same veterinarians. So we are actively in the hiring process for another veterinarian right now. And we are hopeful that very soon on the heels of that one, we will be able to hire another veterinarian. And when that happens, of course, we need support staff because they need techs and vet assistants. But once we can get ourselves staffed fully, believe me, there is nobody that wants community spay and neuter more than me. And so it will happen.
Just need a business card.
Okay, I will give you one as soon as I'm done, and yeah.
If I just say that I need some help providing food for my cat, will you provide it?
Yeah, you can come into the shelter.
Okay. Do you do home deliveries or?
We do not,
Okay,
no. But you can come into the shelter.
okay.
Okay.
You're on Longley Lane, what's the actual address?
2825.
Okay.
Is there anyone else in the room who'd like to give public comment on this item? Is there anyone on Zoom who'd like to give public comment on this item? If you'd like to give comment by Zoom, please use the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Mr. Chairman, not seeing anyone who'd like to give public comment. I'd like to thank Julie for coming out to.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to just thank Jerlene for making the time to come in. We are an animal loving community, and I would say a good 50% of our community members have pets of one kind or another. And it's also notable that about 55% of our community rents. And so the issues Jerlene brought up about, the challenges with pets and renting and are really real. And I was delighted to hear her talk about the efforts to get more veterinarians and to, expand their spay neuter program, because what she didn't say is that they do spay and neuter all the animals, right, Jerlene, that
Yes.
leave your facility. So you're
Yes.
already spaying and neutering some 9,000 animals, if I understand it.
Yeah, well, so many of some of those animals were already spayed and neutered
Right.
because maybe we did it. But this last year, we did 7,206 spay and neuter surgeries. Thank you very much for bringing that up, because in my mind, it's automatic, but you have already pointed out that not everybody knows that. So thank you.
Yeah, so you're already doing a tremendous amount
Yes.
of spay and neutering, but there is a tremendous demand. And just today I had my dog that, my other dog that didn't poke her nose in today, at the vet. And that vet visit, it was just for a potential eye infection. They did a really thorough checkup, $200. You
Yeah.
know, just in and out the door. And I thought about the cost, and I talked to the vet when I was there about the fact that one of my upcoming goals is to talk about getting a veterinary school in Nevada, which we don't have. And we don't even really have reciprocity. What we have is the WICHE program, which is a way of offsetting costs for students who go to out of state to veterinary, but they have to commit to come back for a certain amount of time. But they also in Nevada have to pay back part of their loan. In other states, they have more money and they don't have to pay back their loan. So anyway, I'm going to be continuing the conversation about what we can do to expand services in Nevada generally. But I'm grateful for the work you're doing, Jerlene, the turnaround and the communication in particular, with animal services has been really huge. So
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I should point out that on Friday, just this last Friday, my medical team did 99 cat surgeries.
I mean,
On Friday.
unbelievable.
On Friday, 99. It is all hands on deck right now. We cannot we have so many coming into our organization, we can't put them up for adoption until they're spayed or neutered, and it is a bottleneck. So even we are feeling that strain of we can't get them spayed and neutered as fast as we need to get them on the adoption floor.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Let me say, by the way, that with regards to this organization, obviously, we're mostly talking about developments and things like that, but occasionally we have presentations like this. And remember, you may not be interested in an animal now, but maybe a friend of yours says, you can, wait a minute, I just saw this program. Here's who you ought to talk to, kind of keep it in mind. I think it's part of positive things that our NAB does.
Thank you.
Well, and
So-
one of the issues that the city took on was we took on this issue of puppy mills. And we actually banned puppy stores from Reno, the city of Reno. Now they're still allowed in Sparks and the county. I think there is one in Sparks. I don't believe there is one in the county. But the idea was to puppy mills breed and generate lots and lots of extra cute little puppies. But what happens is those puppies, some of them get abandoned or mistreated. And we really want to encourage people to adopt, to your point, Hal, to adopt through our shelters. So thank you.
Okay, good.
The very last thing I would like to, just my shameless plug, is on Monday, we launched our brand new website. And so if you haven't been to our website ever, or maybe you have, and you remember just how terrible it was and how hard it was to find what you needed and to see the adoptable animals, please go to it now. This is phase 1. More information will be more content will be added as time goes on in phase 2 and so on. But it is a completely different website. And we're very excited about it.
It won't take you right to petfinder.com.
Okay,
So, okay.
thank you.
I will leave some informational sheets and my cards on this table back here. So please, if anyone would like to come see the shelter or has additional questions for me, my door is open and I would welcome you to do that.
Thank you so much.
Okay, okay, we'll be going to C1 now.
Yes.
By the way, let me point out, and it's mentioned in the language here. It's one thing for us to hear presentations on developments and that sort of thing, but if you don't pass on your view of what you heard, or your opinion of what you heard, then it doesn't leave this room. So we in fact have developed a project for your review forms that you can use and maybe find out who you need to talk to about issues which are particularly important to you. But if it just stays in this room, then, you know, I'm not sure we accomplish nearly as much as we'd like to. All right, C1, Manzanita fence, MJDB, and who's presenting on that?
I believe we have the applicant here. Applicants. So we both. That's up to you. You can both come up and you can just steal a chair and pull it forward.
Yeah. And again, if you'd identify yourself when you start to talk, that'd be great.
My name's Eliza Schreckenberger, and I'm actually the owner of this home. This is my daughter, who is the resident of the home.
And Melissa Schreckenberger.
And I apologize, I don't have the ability to do a nice PowerPoint presentation. That's not in my genre,
That's
so.
okay. We need information, okay?
So I actually,
We're not here to be entertained. We need information, all right?
oh, that was entertaining. So I've submitted some images here so you can see why we feel that our major deviation application is totally applicable and aesthetic, and we feel that it should be approved. This image here is actually from the east side of our property, our neighbor who is just to the east. And if you see the fencing that has become colored or red, that is actually part of their front yard. It is an enclosure that has got an RV in it. So I'm sorry, my images aren't great. If you look further down that image, you can see that red bush, that's the beginning of our property line. So if you could advance to the next one, I think it's a little closer. Slightly closer, so then maybe perhaps the next one. So this is our front yard. If you see the pine tree in the front, so that is the home 940 is just to the east of us. And then you can see the fence in this image. We did set it back 9 feet from the actual curb or the inside of the sidewalk. We did build this fence before getting the permitting. And we did it, and we'd like to see compliance at this time. We did it at a time before COVID, and we did it for the security of our daughter who was living at the house. The reason we did it is we had a neighbor who was very invasive and very unstable and was coming on property often and looking through windows. So we did speak with police, just felt that this was the way to do it, to handle a young woman living in a house by herself. So we thought we did, you know, enough of a setback that it was not such an issue. Our neighborhood also has 4 homes in a row, then we have backyard fences on this portion of Manzanita. All of those backyard fences are right against the curb or the sidewalk. So if you go to the next image, I think I'd go back, sorry, bad lighting. The blue car is the driveway to the homes, and you can see the fence looking back to the east. So that's the view from the other side. Because we set it back 9 feet, there's no safety or security of someone leaving their driveways. They can see other cars coming on and off the street or down the street. It is a wide street. People do go a little too fast. So we feel it's appropriate for the neighborhood. There are other homes that also have their front yard fences like this. So we would like to hopefully have you agree with us. We've landscaped it well. We've also planted hedges that will be against the fence that will eventually grow up to be very tall. They're already 5 feet now, so yeah, taller than that. We tried to make it just blend away. And as I understand by city code, we can have hedges that can be as any height allowable. So the fence is an issue, but if you can have green hedges that are 12 feet tall, we feel this fence is not really intervening or what's the word I want to use? Not aesthetic and not appropriate. So
Before we go further, could I just interject? If I understand this right, you built the fence without a fence permit from the city, and then you
Correct.
also, and then you're asking for retroactive permitting of your fence. Is that the idea?
yes.
And
yes,
then,
correct.
was there some aspect of your fence that didn't comply with city code?
It's too high.
Oh,
So it's only allowed to be 4 feet high and ours is 6 feet high.
okay. And so are you asking from are you going to be in an appeal, or what's the story?
We are requesting a major deviation.
Oh, okay. So you're requesting a major deviation that instead of having your fence 4 feet high, it would be 6 foot high?
Correct.
that- Okay.
Yes.
And then this will be going before the staff, or the planning commission, or which?
I think it'll be going to the planning. Mr. Foster could speak to that.
Yes, this is a major deviation which goes to the planning commission, and I believe it's scheduled for August 7th.
Yes, as I understand.
Okay, and then you're looking for the input from the NAB on the appropriateness of your application. And just so you know, they will write comments. And then those comments will be considered by both the staff and the planning commission as they're evaluating the project. Okay, so that really helped me to just set the stage for what you're doing here.
So the other thing I should say, if you want to advance one more, I think I have another example of backyard. Oh, sorry, keep going. Thank you. So this would be further to the west. And as you can see, this is 2 neighbors down. You again have another backyard fence that's right there, and that's the corner of Manzanita and Lakeside. So, and then.
So how high is this fence?
That's also 6 feet, because that is someone's backyard.
Okay.
So, and then in my original application, I should have showed more. This is across the street. And as you can see, this is literally across the street from the home, our home. There's a side yard fence that's also 6 feet high. So there are other examples really right there in our neighborhood.
So what are the rules? And maybe Jeff could tell us, what are the rules for these fences?
So allowable fence height in a front yard is 4 feet, up to 4 feet. And in a side or rear yard, which are most of the examples that you're pointing out, those are side and rear yards, the allowable fence height is 6 feet.
Okay, so the 6-foot fences she's showing us are what is allowed by code.
They are allowed by code because they are in those properties' side and rear yards.
Right,
as
I got
opposed
it.
to front. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Even though, as you're pointing out, those side and rear yards are right up against Manzanita, and those fences are built right up to the back of the sidewalk, whereas yours is inset.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so it happens that their side or rear fence happens to front on Manzanita.
Correct.
As is most of the block all the way to the east to the next street, which I can't remember right now. So when we built the fence, in our error of not applying for a permit, we should have gone ahead and done that at that time, but we felt it really was not an issue since we had such a severe setback of 9 feet, which would basically be what? 12 feet from the actual street. So that was our error, our misnomer. We built this fence back in 2018, so. And so this is another example just up the street from us. It's obviously a stone wall, but this is a front yard. So there are other examples. There's this one that's not too far away from us too, even though it's not a wall, it certainly is over 6 feet tall. So I just wanted to show, and this is another one. So I just wanted to show that we are not the only ones who have done this, and it's, it is what it is. I'm not trying to tattle on other people. I'm just showing that there are other.
No, we understand.
Yeah, so,
We understand.
so thank you for understanding. Yes.
I mean, at some point, obviously we can't act on this.
Right.
But we can become aware that these are situations that sometimes people have to deal with, sometimes retrospectively. And again, we always encourage you, if we've got somebody from planning or wherever that you can talk to, that might be helpful, please do. That's part of the reason they're here. So if there are people here that they need to interact with, I can't tell you how many times, we've got city staff here. They may be here for a presentation. Sometimes they're just here to listen and see if there's something that they can, discuss with people or clarify or whatever it is. We appreciate that very much. So, all right.
Yes, I've spoken with Mr. Foster, everyone at the city. Thank you. You've been really helpful
Okay.
because I needed some hand holding. So yes.
Are there any comments from the board members? Member Keats?
Keeps, this may be an inappropriate question, but if that was my house and my fence, I wouldn't have done anything about it. Like,
Oh, you're saying you wouldn't even have
I
worried
wouldn't
about?
bring it up. I don't want somebody to tell me to take it down.
Well, it did come up. We didn't actually do that. So I mean, I'd like to say I'm the biggest person saying I want to do things correctly, but it just, suddenly we were notified that we were not in compliance. So
Were all these other houses notified?
I couldn't speak to that. I don't know. I don't know these
Might
people.
help you to find out.
That's true. It's a
Should
possibility.
be part of the code enforcement record, somebody made complaints.
That's
You're
true.
entitled to the information.
That's true.
And because to me, your fence is nice compared to that, and it's there too.
Thank you. We think so
And
too.
you have all the vegetation and if you know, you paid for the variance request and all that stuff, and it's time consuming, it's not inexpensive.
No,
And
it's
the
not.
very worst thing that's happened is in code currently, you know, you go 4 feet, but you're allowed to put something else up for the last 2 feet.
We are not, though, as I understand, Mr. Foster could probably speak, that you can do your post higher, but you can't do anything beyond that, as I understand,
I think
correct?
you can put a policy kind of thing. because
I don't think we can.
That might be up for debate.
I have a question. Is this a homeowners association thing, or I don't understand the whole purpose as to why the city feels the need to tell people how high their front fences can be?
In code.
It's a code issue, so,
Not an HOA issue, though.
no.
You're not in an
It's a
HOA.
city code,
Yeah.
so.
But I think the gentleman, I don't know who spoke, if they could identify themselves.
Yo,
Can you say your name for the record, please?
Ian Letka.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay, so I think he was saying, why does the city have a code about fences, maybe?
Yes. Which cities have codes, so that is,
Well, it's a little more complicated than that, especially if, I used to work with the contractors board and we're dealing with contractors who put up fences. And some put up good fences, some put up bad fences. And there are ways in which fences sometimes, because of the nature of the situation, can be intrusive of your neighbors. And there are all sorts of reasons. So rather than having a duel at high noon over fence height, the city, in fact, is willing to try to bring continuity to the situation and deal with issues as they come up. So I think I actually appreciate the fact that the city is there, but yeah, you know, the code, let me put it this way. If there's a code, there was a problem at some point.
Mhm.
And the problem at some point caused the code to have to be put in that form. It's the nature of how this sort of thing works. So, I mean, I think that's, but, you know, I mean, I think I appreciate the fact that we're certainly cognizant of the fact that you had, you know, good reasons for putting the fence up, and now you're trying to put everything together the way it should be, which is the way we would hope everybody would do. And, you know, I appreciate your, you know, making us aware of this situation, because again, these situations, we may have another situation like this 6 months from now, and that will be a little more informed about it because you've been here. We appreciate that.
well, thank you.
Are there any
I hope that you can see that there is a reason for it. We are trying to be compliant, but it just is a situation where sometimes we act and we don't always know, but I know we can no longer say that. We cannot be naive, right? We should have done the due diligence and we didn't have to begin
But
with.
now.
So now we're hoping you will find it in your opinions that this is not beyond a possible exception of code and a major deviation, so.
Are there any
Thank
other
you.
comments from board members relevant to this project?
Sure. Has there been a staff report produced for this issue?
I do not know.
No, the planner who's assigned to it, he and I spoke today, he has not yet prepared a staff report. It will be due next week.
So I would recommend you read the staff report before you go to the planning commission.
Thank you.
Yeah,
We'll do
yeah,
that. We'll do that.
yeah, let's make sure you're all on the same page. Yeah.
Question for you.
Yes.
If somebody's coming in with a technically a code violation years after the fact, I've seen so many of these things, people never apply. Seems to me, are the real egregious ones like front porches and over, second level porches overhanging their neighbor's property, stuff like that. Nobody's ever made them take it down once it got built, and really egregious things, like actually using airspace on the property line, stuff like that in the older part of town. I never see anything like take it down, so they should get their variance, it shouldn't be a possibility that the city would say nothing to take down the fence.
It's a possibility, yes. I mean, it is clearly a possibility. The planning commission, you know, they will. They're the body that gets to decide that. So, and then ultimately, if the planning commission votes no, it can be appealed to the council. So, but it's certainly a possibility.
Well, I know you have to say it's possible, because of course, until the decision is rendered, it's possible.
Right.
But you ever see that happen? This is the first kind of thing that I've seen come
In
up.
my experience, I have not seen it happen, but I have heard that there have been situations where it has happened. I would say it would be an extreme situation.
Which has happened or hasn't happened.
Wait, hang on. Here's the problem. If we get into specific situations, we should have pictures and, you know, there's a process here. There's a process here by which the city, the planning commissioner, or whoever's the appropriate body is alerted to the fact there's a problem. And they may need more or less information. And then there's an interaction. The best way to do this is for the parties who the parties who have the responsibility, code responsibility, or whatever, to be meeting with the parties who have the problem, so that they can work these situations out. I don't want to get into specifics of other situations, which are not with us here. I think it's clear. I think we understand your situation. We understand you're trying to do the right thing. And we would certainly be optimistic that the city would do the best they can to resolve the issue. And it sounds like a simple issue, but sometimes with sightlines and everything, it actually gets very complicated. So, and certainly we would encourage that communication to continue as much as you can.
Are there any
Okay.
other comments from board members?
Any questions?
Seeing none, is there? Member Keats?
By the way, if you're in planning commission, you have to wear green socks.
Thankfully, I'm not on the planning commission, but yes, I do enjoy having fun stuff.
All right.
Well, thank you.
Did you want to say anything else?
No, I support you.
Thank you.
And I'll write a comment supporting you.
Thank you. We
Okay.
appreciate it. So.
Okay.
Is there anyone in the public who'd like to give public comment on this item? Is there anyone on Zoom who'd like to give public comment on this item? If you'd like to give public comment by Zoom, please use the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Mr. Chair, I don't see anyone who'd like to give public comment on this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, and we have item C2, Ortiz residence. And deviation front yard setback. And a new principal structure in the rear of the existing accessory structure. So,
Hello all, my name is Brooke Oswald, I'm with the RET Group, I am representing the owners of the property, Tom and Carrie Ortiz. The case number is LEC 240057, just so everyone knows, this, working with Jeff Foster on this.
come on, I just want to make sure we pick.
Working with Jeff Foster on this project, this was a project that was previously approved through a different process, and staff has been kind enough to kind of fast track this for us. We have, the owners have some building permits in, and this is a process that needs to happen. I'll go into a little bit more of that, but this is a previous approval that this body has actually seen before. Next slide. Just to give you a context of where we are, on the left there, the red line is 395. The yellow line is Huffacre Lane, with the yellow representing our project site. Coming over to the other slide, you can see our project site. That is in the sphere of influence. That sphere of influence means that it's actually not in the city of Reno, but the city of Reno has jurisdictional authority over that. The project is acres, about 3.62 acres. It has a zoning of large lot residential 2.5. So that means 2.5 acres are required for one home. There is an existing home on the site. Next slide, please. We'll go to the right first. The structures from the beginning there are three existing primary residents. It's an old historic structure, dates back of 80 to 100 years, very old farming community. They wish to keep that. In this situation, as we can look to the right, you can see the historic house, the garage, the hay shed, the milk barn. But what we see along all of Huffacre Lane are those large, very big setbacks and big kind of green. And that's really the character of that neighborhood. Additionally, as we're going from the city of Reno, more urbanized, to these larger lots, we're seeing, that's sort of a transition as we move to that county where we're often more rural in nature. What they'd like to do is put in the primary proposed residence to the rear of the home. So this, as I said, this was previously approved for a process called a variance. So this was approved back in 2020. At that time, our code has changed since there. At that time, we didn't have a number of these flexibility and relief. So we have, what you just saw was a major deviation that's come in. We have a minor deviation that's up to 10%. This is called an alternative equivalent compliance, which basically says it doesn't meet code, but because of circumstances or how you're approaching this, what you're proposing is good or better of what you would accomplish through code. So the desire really is to keep that larger front yard and that and the historic structures. Now, if they were to come in, they would have to move the structure, remove those, move the structure up to the front, and meet sort of the similar setback that you see at the property next door. That is that deviation of the front yard setback and the locating the primary structure to the rear of the yard. Next slide, please. So there are several of our master plan. That's that big 20,000 feet looking down on this. That large lot neighborhood, is that zoning we're looking at, provides that opportunity to preserve the rural nature of the existing neighborhoods in the city and the sphere of influence. What our master plan policies of being context sensitive. So we're really looking at the context there and saying, what is the appropriate way to handle this? You could tear down the old structure, move them back. You could put that back in behind. In looking at that behind those buildings and the trees, you see the rooftop of the house in the back. So you're really seeing a minimal sort of impact on that. The historic preservation, we have a number of historic, although it's not on a register or it is something that is significant to our community and our culture. And then that preservation of those natural features, that large front and greenway that we see along Huffaker Lane. Excellent. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation. I can be available to answer any questions. Yes, Donna.
Donna Keats, okay, in 2020, there was a variance.
Yes,
We're still in the spirit of influence of Reno then.
correct.
My question is about what did the variance provide? And why is it now needed, can you read on this alternative?
Certainly. So if you look, that was 2020. I don't know if many of us remember that time. There was a few things going on around that time. So they had a building permit in, they had done this. Those are good for 18 months.
Oh, okay.
So they could have got an extension. They had some other things going on. So it expired. So when they turned in their building permit to finally now to move forward to get their home done, it was flagged that, hey, this has expired. So they had to come back in and said, okay, we need to redo our variance. And we actually looked at it and said, you know, there's actually a new process now. This is a more appropriate process. It's more flexible on the findings and it's more appropriate what we're doing. So that's why that was done that way.
Okay. And so then the two things that I think I understand are because the main house is never getting back,
Correct.
front yard setback is no longer exactly what it's supposed to be, so there's the front yard setback issue.
Correct.
And then the second issue is having a main property to the rear of an accessory property.
Correct. So currently it's a primary home, but with you can only have one primary home because it doesn't have 5 acres, but only 3.5. So that will be back. So this will become an accessory. So as part of the conditions that Jeff has written, they will have to confirm that that is an accessory. So that wouldn't be an additional primary residence or anything. That would become a guest quarters is what we're anticipating. So
now that we do not yet have an ADU ordinance in the city, you know, Washoe County has an ADU allowed, they can't make it be an ADU.
They could not make it be an ADU, and there's a condition specific in that stating that it will have to meet the requirements of a guest quarters, which usually is removal of stove and some of the kitchen stuff.
Right.
So they'll have
the kitchen has go. But then the other thing about the guest quarters is that the guest quarters are supposed to be same architectural style and materials more or less as the primary structures. What are you gonna do with the primary structure? I mean, that compatibility.
Correct. So we discussed this with staff and looking at that with the primary coming in. We really looked at it's the separation of that old historic sort of structure and having it be independent of the new architecture. So we're anticipating to be complementary, but we're not anticipating to the level that we would come in with some of the other on an 8,000 square foot lot or something like that, because we are at 3.26
Basically saying,
acres.
I mean, I'm asking
Yeah.
this in the big context of
Correct.
the new thing about has to meet guest quarter standards. That's, we know they're not gonna. So.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm wondering, because in my neighborhood, it's happened years and years ago. I live near Virginia Lake, and there's all the little houses and very big lots. And somebody did that, nobody in the neighborhood could figure out how, and put a gargantuan, exceedingly modern style, multi-story thing in the back part of the property. And nobody can figure out how that was actually allowed to happen, but it did, and, you know, everybody got over it, of course, and vegetation grew in and all of that, so I mean, I don't personally care so much if they wanna do a primary house and it's totally different architecture, I'm just wondering how you jiggle the law.
Yeah, and Steph and I actually discussed this on how we look at that architecture. It was sort of determined by staff that there was that flexibility and with code that could have that difference would be flagged for that, because we could have identified that architectural change in this alternative equivalent also if it was deemed necessary.
You could, but
Yeah.
it's not, so.
It was determined by staff not to be necessary.
So,
Because it's an existing structure.
Yes.
Essentially, that it's an existing structure that, even though it would be, the kitchen would be being removed.
no, I'm talking about primary structure, it's not gonna be.
Well, right, so-
Guest quarters.
But the guest quarter standards don't say what the primary structure needs to look like, they say what the new accessory
Right,
structure.
so one would think.
Yeah,
This is like that.
it doesn't work that way. I hear your logic, but it doesn't work that
No,
way.
it's the loophole language with the, about the ADUs and trying to make them, oh, they have to be guest quarter standards. But of course they don't ever, so I'm kind of wondering how, you know. does
Yeah,
that-
and I have
that.
in discussions with the residents, they've owned the property for a while, they have no intention of turning it into AD.
Well,
an
I
AD.
don't-
They just want to, it has a historic and family value to
You
them,
know,
and that's the
if it's an ADU
definition.
thing goes through, go ahead and have an ADU, I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
actually trying to fight that battle or anything, I'm just wondering about code.
Yeah,
And there's so much flexibility in the code, in my opinion, that these standards are kind of meaningless. About guest quarters or have to be architecturally compatible, similar materials, all that one, actually apparently they don't. Cause they don't usually.
yeah, and it's sort of,
There's so much
it's that flip that our primary is becoming the accessory, and the primary doesn't have to match the accessory, it's the accessory to the primary, and how it goes back and forth, yeah.
No, well, you could straighten decision,
Yeah.
just letting that go.
Yeah, and that was a discussion we did have, and it was determined that it was, you know, because we could have included that in this process.
Well, I don't
We
think it's in
determined-
anybody's interest to do it, so I'm not arguing
Yeah.
about what she's done, like, I'm really asking a bigger.
Yeah, and I think this is that unique situation where we really do have a historic structure, and to try to match that actually wouldn't be appropriate. It's probably more appropriate to come in with a different architectural style to determine.
Yeah, I don't know, it kind of was into that, I was curious about this application of the code and the enormous administrative flexibility that
Yes.
seems to be involved.
I understand your concern.
Roman Schomburg, I got a question, to her point. What is the intent of the guest quarter regulation or standard if they are easily changed, or if they can be deemed unnecessary? What was the necessity in the first place?
Well, I guess the necessity is to preserve the historic structure, right? And so you can only have one primary, one dwelling unit on that site. But the code does allow for guest quarters. And so they have the large site. And so what they're doing is they're turning the primary into an accessory, into a guest quarters, and then building their primary.
So
Is
is
that-
that it was done in reverse?
Yeah, it's kind of, it's sort of a reverse, is that normally what you have is a home and you're building an accessory. This is, they have a primary home, they're making an accessory to build a primary. But staying within code of only having one dwelling unit on the site.
And are the other buildings, the milk bar and the hay shed, are those gonna
There, I think the intent is to keep them at
Keep
this
this,
point.
because that's part of the, sort of the ambiance of that.
Yeah, the ambiance, and then
historical-
there's kind of a family, there's a lot of family connection.
Yeah.
To the
Gotcha.
Is the new house, I mean, it's awfully close to the property line, I assume that's a 5-foot setback or something?
It will be a 10 foot, and the footprint may change a little bit in that we have the building plans in right now, but it will meet the building will have to meet all setbacks outside of that front setback and how we deviate, potentially how we
What's the front
deviate
of
to
the
this
house?
process.
What's the front of that structure?
I think what you'd see is you're coming in here, you have a garage and your front facing out this way.
Okay, so the rear setback doesn't infringe
So our
upon.
rear would be here. This would be a side setback
Really?
and our other side setback.
Okay, so the front is where?
So in theory, this would be the front of the house. This is the front yard, so it would be the
Okay.
front of the house, would be
That's the
considered a
garage.
side. I think with your garage coming in, we probably see the entry over here,
Okay.
but technically, front, side, rear, side.
And to the west, the structure to the west of that, is that a house or barn?
There's another barn here, an outbuilding, and then there's another residence.
So the whole
that's-
building is pretty far away from another.
Yeah.
barn.
Is there currently a building in the, place for the primary residence?
Yeah, there's like an old, barn, like barn or shed structure, yeah.
There is going to be a home to the west of it.
Yes. Yeah.
Flattening that right
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, they just did like.
Four new properties there?
What we're kind of seeing is a lot of the homes are coming into cluster, and it's sort of preserving that open space that we see around those structures.
Mhm.
Well, I have one just interesting question. You've labeled those 4 buildings historical, but you're not applying for historic preservation. So why are you bothering to call them
Well,
historical?
they meet the standards, anything over 50 years old
Yes.
in the city of Reno meets the standards to be considered a historic structure. So they're not on any registry or anything of that, but they are historic in the sense, and they meet the criteria from the city of being a historic structure.
One more question. Easy
Yes.
one. Am I correct in my memory in that this is going to planning tomorrow night?
It will go tomorrow night, yes. So we disclose in the NAV it was the NAV that came up as quickly as it did, so. As I said, the staff was very generous with us to speed up the timeline because we had a previous variance that had been approved before, and there are building permits in right now.
This whole thing, the second structure, the setback change, the lack of compatibility with the existing structure, all that was already.
This has already been approved through the variance, yeah,
So this
in
is now
2020.
Just now we're gonna call it turn into the equivalent compliance.
Yes.
It's an easier route than a variance.
Yeah, the findings are easier in the variance. It wasn't the right tool, but it was the only tool we had at that time, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments from board members? Is there anyone here in the room who'd like to do public comment on this item? Please start by stating your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, my name is Ian Leckahans, and this almost smells like eminent domain to me.
In what way?
It seems like you're trying to. Maybe eminent domain, but it does seem like you're starting to push a historic building, and I know it isn't, but is it like something that had an actual historic, like, influence the history or city of Reno in any way? Or is it just something that it's old and it's historic just because of how old it is?
So the city of Reno deems any building or structure over 50 years to be historic.
Okay,
And there's a process, if demolition or any of that, there's actual process of recording that and going through that process. I believe there is there's Reno in our history and settlements of these older farm areas, and these farm areas are part of our culture and our history. And important, and they're important to this family, and they wish to preserve it.
So what he's saying is that building also belongs to the same people who are
The
building
same
this
people,
building.
yeah, and
They-
eminent domain means a city or government agency using their power to take private property.
okay.
Yeah.
So,
Through through a process and a means and a fair market value of that property.
okay. So I did misspeak when I did
That's
it.
okay. Yeah, no, that's what, we're all here, I think.
This is quite literally my first
These-
time.
That's the beauty of the NAPS is that the community can learn and start to understand these process procedures and what we're doing. So thanks for coming out tonight.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Is there anyone on Zoom who'd like to give public comment on this item? If you'd like to give public comment by Zoom, please use the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Mr. Chair, I don't see anyone who'd like to give public comment by Zoom.
Okay,
Oh,
thank you very much.
You're
Yeah,
good.
good.
Mr. Chairman, Keats.
I would fully support this, but I kind of doubt that when I write comments tomorrow morning, the planning commission's actually going to read them. Or get to them, because a lot of times they get hung up and since the timeline's so short. So if you can just.
I would, Tyler, would you be able to get those over and scanned over to staff? And certainly we'd want planning commission to have those, so.
If you submit your comments to me, to any of the board members, I'll make sure they're forwarded to planning commission staff as soon as I receive them.
You know how often I've written about it. My comments on.
Right fast.
I don't mind. I'm sure
I will.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you. All right. Okay, that completes C2. Next is board commission committee members reports or announcements. Yes, Stacy? And again.
Sorry, we're still meeting.
Sorry.
Okay, membership for the record, I am your representative, on the, charter committee for the city of Reno, appointed by Vice, Mayor Dewar. And if you didn't know, we've been meeting monthly for this entire year. And our June meeting, we did vote on our recommended proposal for our bill, or for a potential bill draft request. We are doing our joint meeting with council on July 29th at noon. And we are proposing 4 different recommended changes to the charter committee. One is revising the charter to update to gender neutral language. That was proposed by the last charter committee, but the bill failed at the last legislature. So that did not move forward. We also have a proposal to clean up language on how charter committee members are appointed. The language was really confusing before, and the appointees' term did not always align with the appointer's term of office. So we just aligned that to make it smooth. So if you are appointed by the legislature versus the council, your term will match your appointer's term. So that's just a sort of a language cleanup. I think that was the original intent within the charter. However, it didn't spell it out the right way. Another proposed change that we are bringing forward in the charter is that the city manager must reside in the city of Reno within 6 months of hire. The current charter says you must live in the state of Nevada, but we felt like it is imperative if you are working for the city, you should probably live in this city. And then
In other words, this is the, you've got a dog in the hunt provision of the changes.
what was that?
This is the, you've got a dog in the hunt, part of the provision changes.
So
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm trying to be funny.
Yeah, no.
That's all.
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, I
okay.
don't personally, but
Oh.
I work at the legislature and I didn't.
Like the city manager has a vested interest in the city
Yes.
by living.
Okay,
Yes.
got it,
Gotcha,
yes,
okay.
yes, I didn't realize this was a problem with municipalities across the state. Dealing with North Las Vegas, there were, employees that were on the East Coast and I had no idea that you could get these appointments.
Well, that's Las Vegas. We're better here.
Right, okay, so that was the third, and then the last proposal that we are bringing forward to council for our potential bill draft request is that we want to say that if a council member resigns with more than 180 days left in their term, that we have a special election. Right now, the council has the decision point that they can either appoint or call a special election, and we feel like it's mandatory. And I think we all know, we've seen this happen in the last few years where there's several appointed members on the council. People did not feel like that was super democratic. So we understand it costs money, so that's why we are proposing that 180 days. If it's shorter than that, go ahead and appoint someone to fill that seat. However, you know, if it's longer than 6 months, we want the people to be able to decide who is representing them. So those are the 4 recommendations from your charter committee that are going before the council on the 29th at noon. And thanks for letting me represent you. It's fun.
I have a question, Dave
Yeah.
Titzel, for the record. So can you explain what the charter committee is exactly? I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, so the charter is like the city document that's like the constitution for the city, the guiding governing document. But in Nevada, the state oversees the municipalities' charters. There cannot be changes within that charter unless the state legislature approves it. So I believe that there's 5 municipalities in the state right now that have charter committees that consist of community members that review the charter, make the recommendations to their municipality, and then each municipality has X amount of bill drafts that they can take to the legislature, and it's dependent on the population size. So the city of Reno has 2 bill draft requests that they can submit to the legislature. Historically, I believe they'll use one as a charter update, and then the other, they don't, and that's not mandatory, but that's sort of historically what the city does, is they bring one of their bills as a charter update. And the city has the authority to decide. So we present our proposal on the 29th. And then I believe at the following city council meeting, they will take a vote on whether they are accepting, and our council member can explain further, but whether they accept our proposal and will take that for a bill draft request or not. I will say we had a discussion within the charter committee that if they do not accept, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 of our proposals, we are still happy with moving forward with the other ones. We're not gonna say like, you take them all, it's not an all or nothing situation. And the same guidance that we've sort of given to the public, well, what's Nick's title? The city of Reno's lobbyist or public affairs manager, I forget it.
Government relations.
Government relations. We've also like given him the guidance that since the bill last session died completely because one of the provisions was unpopular, that we are willing to, or we are flexible in our recommendations that if we want to drop, let's say, I don't know, the language cleanup provision is going to kill the bill, we would be willing to drop that to still move forward the other 3 provisions. So that was our recommendation.
And just to be clear, you're a city, you work for the city staff, or you
No,
just a
I'm
volunteer?
just appointed by council member Dewar as our representative, Ward 2's representative on the charter committee.
Oh, okay.
In my professional life, I do work at the legislature and policy for a living.
Oh, okay.
So I'm interested in this anyway, so that's why I sought for this appointment.
Oh,
And
okay.
I assume the city council, once they're considering this, they could also put changes into this, if they want to change the language.
Correct, they have full authority, this is just our recommendations that we're bringing forward.
Sure, understood.
Basically seeking out experts to go through it and clean it up and make recommendations. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a
thank
lot
you
of
for the
us work in the
clarification.
legislature. There's a lot of retired attorneys that serve, and then also activists. That's the makeup. And half of us are appointed by council, and then half are appointed by the legislature.
Okay. Thank you.
That's probably.
Do you have to have a card, and you also have to have a schedule for like, the next future items?
I don't have a card on me, but the next meeting where we are, presenting our proposal is at city council, on Monday, July 29th at noon. And that's a joint meeting between the charter committee and the Reno City Council.
Ian, I can give you my card and I'd be happy to route any communications through me to any of the NAB members relevant to.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any other board members who'd like to give a report or update under this section?
No.
Okay. Seeing none, Mr. Chair, we can move to item.
All right, future agenda items? Any thoughts on
I was just going to, ask if we had the Parks Department that was gonna come and speak to us, or that was my suggestion.
Yes.
We have some action on that.
We do. Who's the director of the Parks and Recreation Department for the city of Reno is planning to come to all the NABs in August. As a result of requests from Member Keller. So he's gonna go through the parks that are in Ward 2, talk about any planned upgrades, talk about current status of the various parks. And then, of course, make himself available for any questions. So,
Thank you.
yeah, you can expect to see that on the August agendas if you're interested. I'm sure you
can I get a schedule where all the future NABs?
I can send that to you after the meeting.
Okay,
Well, this always been very concerned about trees, so that's an appropriate subject for this NAB. All right, any other future agenda items proposed or suggested? Okay, but I'm gonna say, think about this. So that the next time we ask this question, you go, oh, I've been thinking about this, let's put it in. That way we can try to, that way we're not always thinking, oh, we should have talked about that. No, start thinking about it so we can cover the things that we ought to cover. All right, if that's the case, any other public comments?
Is there anyone in the room who'd like to give closing public comment on today's meeting? Seeing none, is there anyone on Zoom who'd like to give closing public comment today? If you'd like to give public comment, please use the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window.
I just want to thank everybody for a great meeting. It was very informative.
Okay, thank
How
you.
do you feel better?
I will be.
Okay, we want to see you around,
Oh, look, I'm just on antibiotics, have a lot of coughing. That's it.
All right, okay. All right, that being the case, is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Okay, so made second,
for the next,
all right, all in favor?
Any opposed?
okay.
Hearing none, it's adjourned at 7:00.
We're done.
Thanks, everyone.